Let's wrap up the latest debate of this campaign. I want to bring in my colleagues Andrew Clennell and Ross Greenwood. Gentlemen, great to see you both. Andrew, first to you. What was your overall assessment of Bowen v O'Brien?
Well, it's good to see Chris Bowen out of witness protection. That's one thing. He's made one or two brief appearances in the campaign, but we've finally seen him tested in a debate. And look, advantage opposition here. I mean, all they have to do, Kieran, is say, look at the scoreboard, right? I mean, they don't even contest this thing that Peter Dutton keeps saying, your power prices have gone up $1,300. So Ukraine war or not Ukraine war, that's pretty damn hard to defend. But on the other hand, no one has an answer here, which makes it such a fascinating debate. I mean, their nuclear plan's pretty pie in the sky. They're all seven government-owned and run. Really? That's going to cost a fortune. It's way off in the never. The gas reservation doesn't do enough. So at least we don't have these silly promises about cutting power bills by $275. As I said to Peter Dutton last week, surely this is more about just promise to stabilise the prices where they are. Look, I think Ted O'Brien kind of won that, but it'd be crazy if he didn't, given where we're at. But Chris Bowen landed a couple of hits as well on him and his plans. Holding up the folders, well, you know, I mean, that's just government versus opposition, isn't it? You've got 213,000 public servants. The other guy's got a bunch of 25-year-old staffers helping him with his policy. But the other interesting line out of it, I thought, Kieran, was Chris Bowen basically comparing the transition to the Industrial Revolution.
Yep, indeed. Some interesting lines. One came at the end there too with Ted O'Brien not ruling out, pulling out of the whole Paris Agreement.
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
what was your take on the debate and who was on top at the end of it?
You know, one of the things I got out of it was at least you saw both of these candidates really paint a picture for Australia in the future, which is about energy. Australia really, its whole economy has been built on cheap energy and the production of minerals. So from that point of view, that has to keep on going. There's one truism on all of this. Whatever energy you think we need right now, we're going to need more in the future, much, much more, because of artificial intelligence and the amount of electricity it's going to gobble down. And the one thing that gets me, and I heard Anthony Albanese talk about this even this morning, again saying, well, nuclear is a pie in the sky and it's too expensive. Now, that might work out there at the moment because it is uncosted, there's no doubt, and it is government-owned, which seems to me to be a bit crazy. But if you were that confident in that, then the government, in other words, Chris Bowen and Anthony Albanese, would simply lift the ban on nuclear energy in Australia. And if they did that, it would be truly tested in the market, because if it was so expensive, nobody would be nuts enough to actually build a nuclear reactor, and if they could get the approval. So I sort of get a sense that there's that. Then the second thing is about gas reservations. And as Andrew says, I mean, we need a whole bunch more gas in the system than what we've got now if we are to have, you know, reliable electricity as these coal-fired power stations close down. And again, right now, it's more gas beneath our feet that's actually needed from the state governments. And I don't think the feds really control that anyway.
Yes, Andrew, in terms of the politics as well, if we go, let's sort of take the helicopter view on all of this stuff as well. It's so detailed. It's so complex. The eyes glaze over, I think, unless you're like an energy expert to know every single petajoule and gigajoule that they're talking about, and then the prices, the dollars, the modelling. It becomes a blur, does it not?
Lucky we've got Tom Connell for the petajoules and kilojoules, Kieran. But look, I mean, Tom gave the best sort of a start to the questioning in that sense as the president of the press club, because he just went straight about price. All right, this opening bit, this is really what everyone cares about. They won't believe whatever they say anyway, but at least they want to hear what they have to say. Have a listen.
The pledge I do give is that energy prices will be cheaper under us than under Mr O'Brien. That is the pledge, because that is what we can state categorically based on the two plans. Look, anybody who predicts energy prices in this very complicated geopolitical environment, I think, is making a punt. So I'm not going to do that. I am going to say that when the alternative plan is to introduce the most expensive form of energy available in the world, which is nuclear, That's going to have an impact. And worse, while we're waiting for that, they're going to sweat the coal assets for longer and harder. And one of the things we've seen in the Australian Energy Regulators report constantly is one of the things that drives higher prices and price spikes is unexpected outages in coal-fired power.
The analysis done independently by Frontier Economics looks at the 25-26 year, and that is the basis upon which those estimates are made of 15% lower gas prices for industry, 7% for households and 8% for wholesale electricity, which flows through around about 3%, all things being equal, to electricity bills. Now, it's notable that I can actually give you those figures because, unlike Chris's answer to you just then, they don't have anything. They've done no economic modelling. As I mentioned before, his decision-making is based on gut. The Treasurer of the country is obsessed, his own words, and the Prime Minister, in his own words, says he's creating an industrial revolution. They don't have any economic modelling. We've done the economic modelling. It's based on a comprehensive plan.
Kieran, it would be a punt to predict the price. Well, they took that punt last time and look how that ended up. Now, they also talked about succulent Chinese meals. I just thought this was a good, funny part of the debate.
You mentioned opposition modelling, which I think is a generous term. I mean, this is the document. I've seen more detailed menus in a Chinese restaurant than this document. This is clearly policy on the run. It's been written after the budget reply.
And this is coming from the Minister, whose own plan wouldn't fit in a Chinese fortune cookie. If anything, that's probably where it would belong.
All right, fortune cookies and salt and pepper squid and the like. And here's the Industrial Revolution line I talked about.
Ted again criticises me and the Prime Minister for using the term industrial revolution. I'm sorry, it is. It is that big. I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that as a massive opportunity for our country. It doesn't all roll out smoothly like in a linear graph in a glossy document. You have challenges and you have setbacks. You deal with them, you grow the economy, you create jobs of the future.
The industrial revolution you want, Minister, don't you think it might be important to do the economic modelling to tell the Australian people the impact?
And Ross, finally to you, if Ted O'Brien does win, if the coalition gets up and he's the energy minister, one thing that the gas industry's put to me in the last week is around the reservation idea. Yeah. That some of this stuff does look more like an export control than a gas reservation, and a change in terms of the export arrangements 10 years from the asset having been purchased by these organisations. So it gets to that whole question of sovereign risk and certainty around investment that the coalition would have to navigate.
It sure does, because, you know, there's a truism here to go to the very basics of this. If our lights stay on but they start to go off, or the price of energy goes up in Japan or Korea, they're not going to be particularly enamoured with investing many billions, tens of billions of dollars here in Australia in the future. The real answer for more gas in Australia is to find it ourselves. But then the problem of that is if you get a split parliament where you rely on the Greens and Labor being in power after the election, then the Greens are saying there will be no more gas projects, in which case, guess what you've got to do? Sweat the coal-fired power stations for longer, which is exactly what Chris Bowen was warning would happen under the coalition. So, as I say, it really is a problem for Australia, for a country that is so energy-rich, to be right now energy poor.
Yes, and Andrew, just a couple of the things on the optics of today. I was surprised that maybe it was an attempt to, you know, do the straight bat Jeffrey boycott, not try and be too dramatic from Bowen, but I thought he'd be a bit more positive in the language. You know, he talks about the energy, renewable superpower and all that sort of stuff. Today it seemed much more defensive than on the front foot when it comes to the rhetoric, Andrew.
Things have turned since the last election when Labor was using climate change as a weapon, as a big policy, as a big difference. And you were hearing that in the doors when I went out and did the door knocks with the candidates. There's none of that now. It's all moved again to cost of living, and that happens in waves in Australia. And no doubt, look, they plan these things, should I say, at Labor campaign HQ, even when a minister gets up. So I think he would have taken advice on that, and to not go too over the top on the climate change argument, to keep it very much about cost of living to people, Kieran.
Yep, indeed, that's the number one game. And Ross, before you go, it'd be remiss of me not to ask you about the volatility that we find ourselves in, because all of this, we see it in the context of Trump, the tariffs and the roller coaster that is the stock market right now.
Well, look, and that's interesting. So there are the tariffs, which are designed deliberately, of course, to bring more investment back into the United States. The second thing that Donald Trump promises is cheaper taxes to again attract investment to the United States. The third thing he promises is cheap energy. Now, there is the key for this debate that we have just had. Competitiveness in Australia, where we've got problems in trying to attain enough energy to keep it cheap for business and also for households, and business leaving Australia with their investment dollars to go to the United States because they get a bigger bang for their dollar there. One interesting thing that was missing largely from this debate right now between these energy ministers was the word green hydrogen. Australia was supposed to have become a green hydrogen superpower. Well, you can understand with most of the projects now shelved, that certainly wasn't a part of the vision for the future of Australia.
Exactly. Massive question mark over that one. Ross, Andrew, great to see you both. Thanks. And